these 2 hours, the presenters on every news channel were saying injured but expected to make a full recovery, and I have no idea why, but it made me so angry.
At 61, Princess Diana's sister has carried both the weight of her own life and the shadow of Diana's enduring legacy. For years, rumors have swirled, stories whispered in tabloids, questioned by historians, and debated by royal watchers everywhere. Yet in an emotional moment, she finally broke down in tears, confirming what many had long suspected but never truly heard from within the family itself. Her words were raw, heartbreaking, and deeply revealing. So, what painful truth did she finally confess after decades of silence? The sister who carried the weight of a nation. The world froze in disbelief on the morning of August 31st, 1997. News flashed across television screens and radio waves with words no one wanted to hear. Princess Diana was gone. A car crash in Paris had claimed her life, along with her companion Dodi Fayed and driver Henri Paul, leaving the planet stunned. Paparazzi pursuit through the Alma Tunnel ended in tragedy, and though doctors at a nearby hospital fought desperately, hope faded before dawn. Within hours, grief spilled onto the streets of London and beyond. Crowds gathered outside Kensington Palace, arms full of flowers, notes, and candles. They came in silence, in tears, in disbelief.
There were lots of things that the French police did that really are inexplicable.
Strangers clutched one another, united by loss. Diana had been more than a royal figure. She was a symbol of compassion, a voice for the vulnerable, a woman who dared to step beyond the rigid lines of monarchy. Her work with HIV/AIDS awareness and her fearless stance on landmines had earned her not only admiration, but deep affection across the globe. And now, she is gone. For her family, the loss was devastating and unbearably public. Lady Sarah McCorquodale, Diana's elder sister, stepped into a role she never asked for but could not refuse. Behind palace doors, the duty of comforting 2 young boys, Prince William, just 15, and Prince Harry, only 12, fell heavily on her shoulders. It wasn't just grief she carried, it was the fragile hearts of her nephews, the future of the House of Windsor, and the memory of a sister loved and misunderstood in equal measure. The days that followed were marked by silence, planning, and impossible decisions. Sarah worked with officials and the royal household to prepare a funeral that would honor Diana's extraordinary legacy.
There was just this sea of flowers. So many people traveled to London.
While also giving the public their farewell. September 6, 1997 became a date engraved in modern history. Millions watched as Diana's coffin, draped in the royal standard, made its way through London. Alongside her siblings, Sarah walked in mourning, her face etched with sorrow, but her posture unshaken. She was not only a grieving sister, she was the quiet guardian of Diana's memory. But her responsibilities didn't end when the cameras turned away. As one of the executors of Diana's will, Sarah faced the delicate task of safeguarding her sister's personal wishes. The role demanded loyalty, secrecy, and trust. Diana's letters, photographs, and treasured possessions carried stories no outsider would ever know. Sarah was determined to protect them, not only for her sister's sake, but for William and Harry, who deserved to inherit more than jewels and papers.
How tragic the death of Lord Mountbatten was, and how sorry she felt for Charles and his entire family.
They deserved the truth of who their mother had been. This raised questions even then. How much of Diana's private world should remain private, and how much belonged to history, to the people who felt she had belonged to them too? Sarah, cautious and steady, walked that line with remarkable restraint. While she shielded the intimate fragments of Diana's life, she also became a bridge between the princes and the legacy their mother left behind. Through quiet gestures, stories at family gatherings, possessions passed down with meaning, reminders of courage, she preserved what could not be written into law. Diana's death left an unfillable void, but Sarah's resolve ensured her legacy endured. She carried it not like a crown, but like a duty of love. Even now, decades later, one question lingers. Did Sarah's quiet devotion shape William and Harry into the men they became? Or did it simply remind them, in every way, of the mother the world lost too soon? But what do you think? Did Lady Sarah's unshakable devotion help William and Harry carry their mother's legacy? Or has it only deepened the wounds of a loss that never truly healed? Shadows of Paris, Sarah's lingering doubts. There are moments in life when even decades cannot dim the pain, and for Lady Sarah McCorquodale, her sister's death remains one of them. To the outside world, Princess Diana's story is told in headlines and documentaries, but to Sarah, it is still an open wound, one marked by unanswered questions, conflicting details, and memories too heavy to silence. One of the most haunting pieces of the puzzle is deceptively simple: the seatbelt. Diana, a woman known to be almost obsessive about buckling up, was not wearing hers the night of the crash in Paris, August 31st, 1997. Sarah has spoken about this in interviews, stressing how unusual it was.
Injured but expected to make a full recovery, and I've no idea why, but it made me so angry.
For years, she had watched her sister make safety a ritual. It was second nature to her, and yet that night, she didn't. Neither did Dodi Fayed, nor their driver, Henry Paul. Only bodyguard Trevor Rees-Jones, the sole survivor, had his belt on. This detail continues to gnaw at Sarah's heart. Why would Diana abandon a habit she practiced religiously? Was it a split-second decision, a distraction, or something else altogether? Sarah doesn't pretend to know the answer, but she admits the inconsistency troubles her deeply. After all, it was precisely the absence of seatbelts that investigators believe contributed to the tragedy. If the seatbelt mystery wasn't heavy enough, Sarah also remembers the chaos of the hours that followed. When news first broke, television reports suggested Diana was injured but expected to recover. Yet within the walls of the Spencer family home, the truth had already been delivered. Diana was gone. For nearly 2 hours, the world believed hope was alive, while her family sat with the crushing reality. That cruel gap between private grief and public misinformation only deepened Sarah's pain. Even today, she recalls the anger, the disbelief, and the sense that the public was misled.
In reality, she was chastised by the media and stifled by the conservative royal family.
Whether intentionally or by error, these contradictions, Diana's missing seatbelt, the conflicting reports, the silence that followed, have left Sarah with lingering doubts. Not necessarily conspiracy, but questions. And questions, when they circle for years without answers, become their own kind of torment. Yet Sarah has not allowed grief alone to define her role. After Diana's passing, she quietly shouldered the responsibility of preserving her sister's legacy. She has spoken at events, supported charities that Diana once championed, and reminded the world that Diana was far more than a tragic figure. Through Sarah's efforts, people remember not just the princess who lit up fashion magazines, but the woman who comforted the sick, embraced the forgotten, and spoke openly about struggles many were too afraid to admit. Her influence has stretched even further, touching the lives of her nephews, Prince William and Prince Harry. Both men have repeatedly emphasized how their mother's lessons about compassion, service, and resilience continue to guide them. In many ways, Sarah stands as a bridge between Diana's past.
She was religious in putting on her seatbelt. Why didn't she put it on that night?
And her son's future, quietly reinforcing the values Diana instilled. Whenever Sarah appears beside them, whether in private conversations or at public memorials, it is as if Diana's voice is still present, reminding them of the path she hoped they would walk. And the public? They have never stopped caring. Each time Sarah shares a memory or a reflection, it reignites global fascination with Diana, not because of royal glamour, but because of the humanity she embodied. The world sees in Diana a figure who was flawed, vulnerable, yet determined to use her position for good. Sarah's words ensure that people continue to remember that side of her. But one can't help but wonder, will Sarah ever find peace with those unresolved details from Paris? Or will the unanswered questions of that night forever cast a shadow over the legacy she works so hard to protect? But what do you think? Can Lady Sarah Spencer, shaped by legacy since birth, ever truly find peace with the haunting shadows of Paris? Stay with us as we uncover the deeper story behind her journey, the forgotten link between crown and scandal. From the very beginning, Lady Sarah Spencer's life was bound to the monarchy in ways few could have imagined. Born Elizabeth Sarah Lavinia Spencer in 1955, the eldest daughter of John Spencer, 8th Earl Spencer, and Frances Shand Kidd, she grew up not just with privilege, but under the heavy weight of legacy. Her childhood homes alone tell the story. Park House on the Sandringham estate, where royal footsteps were never far away, and Althorpe House, the Spencers' ancestral seat since 1508, a place steeped in history, grandeur, and responsibility. It was within these walls that Sarah's world was shaped. Imagine growing up surrounded by portraits of ancestors who had advised kings and queens, walking halls lined with priceless art, and playing in gardens where generations of Britain's elite had walked before. This was no ordinary upbringing. It was preparation for a life forever intertwined with duty, prestige, and the occasional burden of expectation. Her education followed the same path of refinement. Riddlesworth Hall gave her the foundations not only in academics, but in etiquette, teaching her the unspoken rules of aristocratic life. Later, at Westheath boarding school, she refined her independence and learned what it meant to navigate society's highest circles. Boarding life offered structure, but it also demanded resilience, a quality she would need in the years to come. It was here that she also built friendships with others who lived under the same spotlight of privilege and scrutiny. Yet for all her advantages, Sarah's path was not without challenges. Being a Spencer meant eyes were always watching, whispers always following. Every move of the family attracted attention, not least because of their closeness to the royals. With Queen Elizabeth II's Sandringham estate practically at her doorstep, Sarah was bound to brush shoulders with royalty. And brush shoulders she did, more closely than many realize.
Yeah, she said, obviously I'm having the most terrible day. This is one of the worst days of my life,
Before Diana became the people's princess, Sarah had already crossed into royal territory. It was the 1970s, and a young Prince Charles was navigating the pressures of duty, tradition, and the growing expectation of marriage. In this climate, Lady Sarah caught his attention. What followed was not merely an acquaintance. It was briefly a courtship. The prospect of Spencer marrying the heir to the throne seemed almost too perfect. A match uniting two historic families in a way that would echo through history. But as with so many palace stories, things were not as simple as they appeared. Their relationship was never destined to last. Sarah herself would later admit she was not in love with him, an honesty that shocked many. For Charles, it was another reminder of the complexities of finding a bride who could both understand the pressures of his position and withstand the glare of public life. For Sarah, it was a lesson in the weight of royal expectations, one she seemed relieved to step away from. And yet, fate was not finished weaving her family into the royal fabric. Just a few years later, it would be Sarah's younger sister, Diana, who would capture Charles's heart and, eventually, the crown's attention. The irony has never been lost on royal watchers. Had Sarah's story unfolded differently, the history of the monarchy.
And sometimes if they don't want you, if you feel that you can do something, even if they think that, you're not doing something.
And the fate of Diana herself might have taken an entirely different course. Some still speculate whether Sarah's own brief chapter with Charles shaped his eventual relationship with Diana. Did she speak of her experiences to her sister? Did she quietly pave the way? We may never know. What is clear, however, is that Lady Sarah's proximity to the throne gave her a perspective few others could claim. She had seen both the allure and the pitfalls of stepping into the royal circle. Though Diana became the global icon, Sarah remained a quieter figure, carrying with her the same noble upbringing and deep connection to Britain's history. To some, she is the forgotten link, the woman who almost became queen, but chose her own path instead. And in the endless what-ifs of royal gossip, that choice remains one of the most fascinating. But did Lady Sarah's quiet choices and seemingly ordinary life conceal the most extraordinary royal story, never told? Stay tuned. The sister who changed royal history. Before Diana became the people's princess, there was her elder sister, Lady Sarah Spencer. Ordinary in some ways, extraordinary in others. Educated at Riddlesworth Hall and Westheath boarding school, she lived a life that, at least on the surface, looked surprisingly normal for someone of aristocratic birth. She didn't crave attention, nor did she chase titles, but fate had other plans.
In reality, she was chastised by the media and stifled by the conservative royal family.
Because her greatest influence on history would come not from her own ambitions, but from the sisterly bond she shared with Diana. The two were inseparable, bound by trust and affection, and it was this closeness that made Sarah a target. Whenever critics of Diana searched for weaknesses, they often dragged Sarah into the spotlight. Yet, she never wavered. She was Diana's shield, standing firm when the storm of royal life became unbearable. When Diana's marriage to Prince Charles crumbled under public scrutiny and private betrayal, Sarah was the quiet but powerful presence at her side, the one voice reminding her that she was strong enough to fight back. Some say she was the knight Diana never had within the palace walls, the one who helped her endure and, in many ways, triumph against impossible odds. But Lady Sarah's story is not just about loyalty. It is also about irony. For before Diana captured Charles's attention, Sarah herself was once the woman at the center of his affections. Few remember today, but in the late 1970s, Sarah dated the Prince of Wales. The relationship was short-lived, but it caused a stir when it ended abruptly. Sarah famously declared that she would never marry Charles, whether he were the dustman or the King of England. A bold rejection, one that made headlines for months, and perhaps a moment that quietly shaped the destiny of the monarchy itself. The twist of fate? Despite their breakup, Sarah never truly left Charles's social circle. In fact, she became the bridge that introduced her younger sister Diana to the heir to the throne. It was a casual introduction, one Sarah likely never imagined would change the course of history, but it did. Diana and Charles's whirlwind romance quickly became a global spectacle, one that redefined the image of the royal family and eventually ended in one of the most dramatic tragedies of the 20th century. Even after Diana's death in 1997, Sarah's loyalty remained unshaken. While others moved on or spoke cautiously, Sarah dedicated herself to preserving her sister's memory and the causes Diana had fought for. She kept alive the spirit of compassion and independence that made Diana beloved worldwide. In many ways, Sarah became the living proof of Diana's legacy, a reminder that behind the fairy tale weddings and palace walls were sisters bound by love, sacrifice, and resilience. And yet, whispers linger. Could Lady Sarah's closeness to Diana and her role as both protector and introducer have played a part in the darker mysteries surrounding Diana's fate? Was her rejection of Charles decades earlier just another twist of chance, or did it plant the seeds for the chain of events that followed? We may never have clear answers, but one thing remains certain. Without Lady Sarah, there may never have been Princess Diana, as the world remembers her. So, was Lady Sarah almost queen herself, or was she always destined to stand in the shadows, quietly shaping history through the choices she made? One sister turned down the crown, the other carried its weight until it crushed her, and together, their story remains one of the most fascinating what-ifs in royal history. But was Lady Sarah's fleeting romance with Prince Charles a near miss at destiny, or the very twist that reshaped royal history forever? The sister who almost became queen. Every royal love story seems to have a forgotten chapter.
Everyone has the potential to give something back if only they had the chance.
And for Prince Charles, one of the most fascinating was written not with Diana, but with her elder sister. Long before Lady Diana Spencer became the Princess of Wales, it was Lady Sarah McCorquodale who briefly captured the attention of the heir to the British throne. It was 1977, the year the young aristocrat caught Charles's eye at the Royal Ascot. At the time, the prince was considered the most eligible bachelor in the world, with newspapers eagerly speculating over who would win his heart. Sarah appeared to be an ideal candidate. She was intelligent, graceful, and came from the Spencer family, one of Britain's most historic aristocratic dynasties, qualities that made her seem perfectly suited for royal life. For a short while, it looked as if Sarah could become Britain's future queen consort. Those close to the couple noticed a spark, mutual respect, easy chemistry, and an understanding of the demands of high society. Sarah's upbringing had given her the poise and resilience needed for life under constant scrutiny. She knew the rules, the expectations, the sacrifices. On paper, she was everything a royal bride should be. But Sarah was also independent, and she carried a streak of candor that clashed with the palace's rigid traditions. In 1978, that honesty changed everything. During what seemed like a harmless chat with two journalists, Sarah spoke openly about her relationship with Charles. She admitted she enjoyed dating him, but confessed she was not deeply in love. She even remarked that if she ever married him, she would still live life her own way, pursuing her personal values and interests. Her words, though refreshingly modern, landed like a thunderclap in royal circles. Privacy and discretion were sacred in the monarchy, especially for those who might one day wear the crown. Sarah's remarks suggested not only a lack of romantic devotion, but also an unwillingness to mold herself entirely to the role expected of her. For the palace, this was too much.
At Bernstow for your grandfather?
For Charles, it was the end. The romance ended swiftly, but without bitterness. Charles and Sarah parted on polite terms, yet the possibility of her becoming queen was erased in an instant. Looking back, one might ask, was Sarah too honest for her own good, or simply too honest for the crown? The story might have ended there, just a forgotten footnote in royal history, but fate had a twist. After Sarah, Charles's attention turned to her younger sister, Diana. Unlike Sarah, Diana possessed a shy mystery, a warmth that drew people in, and a willingness to adapt to the role expected of her. Within a few short years, Diana became the bride who walked down the aisle at St. Paul's Cathedral in 1981, captivating not just Charles, but the world. And yet, the shadow of Sarah's earlier romance lingered. What did she truly think as she watched her sister step into the role she once brushed against? Some say Sarah acted as a confidant during Diana's early royal years,
That eating disorders are merely an expression.
guiding her through the pressures that came with the crown. Others wonder whether a hint of regret ever crossed her mind, that she could have been standing where Diana stood, if only she had chosen silence over honesty. It is one of those curious what-ifs in royal history, the sister who almost became queen only to step aside, unknowingly making way for the most famous royal love story of the 20th century. But what do you think? If Lady Sarah hadn't stepped aside, would Diana have ever crossed paths with Prince Charles, altering royal history forever? Keep watching. Diana and Charles, a fairy tale crowned in shadows. Diana's first brush with destiny came almost by accident. At just 16, the shy, soft-spoken teenager happened to meet Prince Charles through her older sister, Sarah, who was briefly dating the heir to the throne. No one at the time could have imagined that this quiet girl, with dreams far removed from royal palaces, would one day become the most photographed woman in the world. Charles did not see her as a future bride at that moment, yet something about her youthful charm lingered in his mind. Only after his relationship with Sarah ended did Diana slowly step into his path again. By the end of the 1970s, Charles and Diana were being seen together more often, and whispers began to spread. There was something about her, fresh, innocent, and untouched by the cynicism of royal circles, that seemed to catch not only Charles's attention, but the imagination of the public as well. By 1980, newspapers and magazines had turned their spotlight onto the unlikely pair.
As I said, many end up on the streets as a last resort.
Diana, still a teenager, suddenly found herself navigating the intense glare of cameras, while the royal family quietly assessed her. She had the aristocratic roots, the elegance, and the beauty that seemed to fit the mold of a future queen. For many inside the palace, she appeared to be the perfect solution, a bride who could steady the monarchy's image and bring youthful energy into its ranks. When their engagement was announced in February 1981, Britain erupted in celebration. Headlines dubbed her a fairy tale princess, and by the time the wedding day arrived, July 29, 1981, the world was watching. St. Paul's Cathedral was transformed into a stage of unmatched grandeur. Diana, radiant in her ivory silk gown with a train stretching 25 feet, walked into history before a global audience of 750 million people. For a moment, the monarchy seemed wrapped in magic again. To the public, their marriage looked like the perfect union. Diana's compassion and natural ease with ordinary people made her an instant favorite, while Charles appeared dutiful as he guided her into the traditions of royal life. But behind the sparkle and ceremony, fault lines were forming. Whispers hinted at tension, at mismatched expectations, at shadows that the cameras could not capture. The world had been promised a fairy tale, but what really unfolded behind closed doors? And how did Diana, barely out of her teens, cope with the crushing weight of becoming not only a wife, but a global icon under relentless scrutiny? Stay connected. Lady Sarah, the sister who never left Diana's side. Through all the glitter and shadows of Diana's royal life, one constant remained: her sister, Lady Sarah. Unlike many figures who drifted in and out of Diana's world, Sarah was there from the beginning, not just as family, but as a quiet anchor when the storm around Diana grew impossible to bear. Their bond was not one of simple sibling affection. It was a partnership, a lifeline Diana often reached for when the palace walls felt too high and the spotlight burned too bright. When Diana's marriage to Charles began to fracture, the cracks showed not only in public, but in private moments, filled with doubt and loneliness. In those times, Sarah became the trusted listener. Friends could sympathize, courtiers could advise, but only Sarah could truly understand the complicated world Diana had been drawn into and the pain that came with it. Her presence was not grand, not loud, but deeply reassuring. Sarah's loyalty extended beyond family ties into an official role as Diana's lady-in-waiting. That position, often given only to those closest to a royal, was more than ceremonial. It meant walking beside Diana at engagements, guiding her through rigid protocols, and shielding her from the pressures that came with endless scrutiny. Cameras might capture the princess smiling gracefully, but behind that polished image was Sarah, steady, composed, and quietly encouraging her younger sister. One moment stands out vividly: the 1993 royal visit to Nepal. Diana, by then one of the most photographed women in the world, faced immense pressure to embody both compassion and royal dignity. Sarah's calm presence throughout the trip allowed Diana to navigate the demanding schedule with a rare ease. While the world saw a princess shaking hands and sharing warmth with strangers, Diana knew her sister's quiet support was the secret ingredient, helping her carry it all with grace. In many ways, Sarah offered Diana something the crown could never give: normality. A sister who laughed with her, listened without judgment, and reminded her she was more than the headlines. For a woman so often portrayed as isolated within palace life, Sarah's companionship was proof that Diana was never truly alone. So, what do you think truly drove Princess Diana's sister to tears at 61? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to share and subscribe.